You are listening to MCC Votes and Seats, the podcast series of the Center for Political Science of Matthias Corvinus Collegium. We provide election insights with experts and politicians.
Welcome to today's episode, where we take a closer look at the recent parliamentary elections in Bulgaria, an event that not only shapes the country's immediate political trajectory, but also offers deeper insight into the evolving society and economy. My name is Bálint L, Tóth, the host of this discussion. Joining me is our guest expert, Ms. Katia Mihailova, Associated Professor of Sociology from the University of National and World Economy in Sofia, who will help unpack the results and what they mean for Bulgaria and beyond. Parliamentary elections were held in Bulgaria on April 19th, 2026, following the resignation of the Zhelyaskov government on the 11th of December last year, amid widespread protests. The vote marked the country's 8th snap election since 2021, reflecting an ongoing political crisis. The campaign was dominated by key issues such as corruption, the rising cost of living, and allegations of vote buying. To begin, let's zoom out and look at the broader implications. What do the election results reveal about Bulgaria's current political, economic, societal, and cultural landscape?
What is the most obvious is the first defeat of the political model imposed by Gerb and Boyko Borisov in 2009. DPS and Delanpevsky are a key part of this model. Seems that the so-called captured state is going to its freedom, but only seems that. Most of the after-election analysis try to find a good comparable of these elections in the history of the democratic Bulgaria. Rumen Radev, the election winner, directly compared the political situation with the uprising of a Senate Peter from 12th century. This uprising marked the beginning of the Second Bulgarian Kingdom. Probably Rumen Radev believes that these elections open doors to the new corruption-free, transparent and democratic Bulgaria, and that's why he established the new Bulgarian party, Progressive Bulgaria, namely in Veliko Trnovo, the capital of the Second Bulgarian Kingdom. And the establishing of the new party happened on the last day of the election campaign. The uprising of a Senate Peter is in the autumn, in the spring, and moreover, in April of 1876, the famous April uprising against the Ottoman rule took place in Bulgarian history. And I think that the April uprising could be a better comparable to what happened in Bulgaria now. The uprising broke out after the so-called Bulgarian Easter from April 1860, or this is the culmination of the national fight for independence of the Bulgarian Church. The April uprising is considered one of the most significant turning points in Bulgarian history. It is a decisive step towards Bulgaria's liberation from the Ottoman rule. But the uprising is drowned in blood. Bulgaria is not liberated after it, and the great powers, Great Britain, Austro-Hungary, Russia, Germany, France, and Italy, directed their strategic political interests towards Bulgaria as a core of the so-called Eastern question. Minding this historical example, we should be very careful now after the last snap elections. Seems that Borisov-Pevsky political model is defeated, but they are still in the parliament and God knows where else. The door for the long-awaited judicial reform is open. The political promises against corruption are fact. The first actions of the government, and not only words, but actions against unfairness of the election process are also done, and we even have their positive results. Alongside this, the rise in the public trust is obvious. All this is a perfect base for a better future, and the greatest responsibility of the future Prime Minister and all of us is to preserve the light from the darkness. There are a lot of fears that the general geopolitical orientation of Bulgaria will be shifted. Bulgaria is a EU member, Schengen member. Bulgaria is in Eurozone and NATO. Roman Radev and his progressive colleagues perfectly know this, and their campaign and their personal political biographies clearly shows that they have no idea to change the current geopolitical orientation of the country. On the other hand, Bulgaria is an Orthodox Christian country with a long-lasting and remarkable history in the Christian world. The Orthodox faith is the core of the spiritual connection between Bulgaria and Russia, as well as with many other countries. The intelligent people perfectly know that such a connection is existential and unbreakable. So, Bulgaria will stay on the crossroad between West and East, rich in cultural heritage and subsurface resources. And what is most interesting for me now are the Britain, Hungary, Turkey, and Israel politics to my country. This is, in short, what I can say as a first glimpse to the new situation in Bulgaria.
Yeah, and let's mention that that new party, Progressive Bulgaria, that you mentioned of Mr. Radev, gained more than 44% of the vote, which is a very considerable victory in the modern history of Bulgaria. And the second was Boyko Borisov's former Prime Minister Boyko Borisov, the GERB party with 13%, and the centrist pro-EU, pro-NATO liberal coalition, We Continue the Change and Democratic Bulgaria, received 12% of the votes. The originally ethnic Turkish minority party, Movement for Rights and Freedoms, gained 7%. And the last party that managed to get in the legislation is the far-right Rebirth Party with more than 4%. However, this overview you kindly gave us was very helpful as a foundation, but the election outcomes rarely emerge in a vacuum, do they? Instead, they are usually the product of multiple interacting forces. Let's dig a bit deeper into those forces. Which internal dynamics, such as governance issues or public sentiment, and which external influences like regional geopolitics or EU pressures might help explain the outcome of this election?
Well, I've just said what is most interesting for me now is the Israel foreign policy toward Bulgaria. We know the history of the rescue of Bulgarian Jews during World War II and also the role of the Bulgarian Orthodox Church in this. I don't see any reason this connection between Israel and Bulgaria to stop in some way. Also, the British realpolitics in Bulgaria is also eye-catching, and probably these both have some impact on the Bulgarian elections, on the result of Bulgarian elections now. Many Bulgarian political analysts compare Radev to Orban. And my question here is, does this imply that Hungary has become a significant factor in the Bulgarian political landscape? The public speaking in the previous snap election campaigns was dominated by the words the embassy, the ambassador, usually American and sometimes Russian embassy and Russian ambassador. Now, in this campaign, the embassy and the ambassador were somehow missing out from the political vocabulary. It seems that this time the public focus was on the internal context, where the most influential factor for the election results was the remarkable efforts of the Bulgarian government, namely the Minister of Interior and the Secretary General, in securing the Bulgarian elections. I'm an election observer from 2014, and I can say that we have never had another example of such an effective commitment of the government to curbing election fraud and ensuring a fair election process. The results are obvious: the increase in voter turnout and the rise of the public interest. The public interest is the basis for social and economic prosperity, according to Fukuyama. Hope that the new political model will do its best to keep and increase the public trust in the political system during the next government mandate.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We have to also mention that due to the long-lasting political crisis, the voter turnout this time was only a little bit more than 50%, which is relatively small compared to European average levels. Let's turn to the main political actors. How would you briefly describe the profiles of the key parties and their leaders, such as Progressive Bulgaria with Mr. Radev, GERB SDS with Mr. Borisov, We Continue to Change, Democratic Bulgaria, Vasilev and Atanasov, Revival of Mr. Konstantinov, and DPS of Mr. Payevsky. And how do you assess their performance in this election?
Well, let's start with the winners. Progressive Bulgaria, extremely professional election campaign. The trained eye can easily outline some of the canonic communication models, such as the two-step flow of communication and the diffusion of innovations in the campaign. From a sociological point of view, the campaign shows in practice the famous spiral of silence effect. The spiral of silence does not mean that the leader of the progressive coalition in Bulgaria or the candidates were silent and not talking too much during the campaign. The spiral of silence means that the progressive Bulgaria simply silenced the other candidates, although they are active public speaking and even singing. As a scientist and university professor, I can say thank you, Progressive Bulgaria, for showing that communication science and sociology are not useless, just on the contrary. Who knows them wins. However, knowing social science works well in the election campaign only if the candidate has a strong and long-lasting position in the political field. That is just the case of Roman Radev. His campaign started in 2016. He wins 2 presidential elections, sustained high political rating, gathered the hope of many Bulgarians that the end of the old political model is possible. Minding all this, the election result of Roman Radev and Progressive Bulgaria now is not an election surprise. GERB and SDS, their slogan for this campaign was work, work, growth. And they did their best. However, everything that is born slowly goes to its ending. Anyway, congratulations for their efforts. Although the lowest election result in their political biography, they are still the second biggest coalition in the Bulgarian parliament. Продължаваме промяната and Democratic Bulgaria. They have a good result, just 12%. This result is good after the unforgiven moral compromises they made in their short political biography. I expected much lower result due to these moral compromises. In the same time, 12% is a humiliating result after the organization of the massive civil protest in December 2025. Revival. This is a typical biography of the nationalist political party in Bulgaria. A revival started with the Bulgarian history with a campaign of a Bulgarian history textbook written by Kostadin Kostadinov as a parent and historian for his own children in 2016. Revival win 2 mandates in the European Parliament in 2024 and now ended with 4% in these elections. The question here is why the parties that declare deep love in Bulgaria have so short political history, just 10 active years. Is there love, a love in action, or this is a love in dreams following Dostoevsky? DPC and Bálint, just 7%. And the second place in all DPC regions, except one, Kırgızistan, where this time they face the strong presence of progressive Bulgaria. I think that this is what happened when the son tries to kill his father or a student his mentor, metaphorically speaking, of course. БСП and the United Left, this was a campaign on credit. In the beginning, Krumzarkov wildly announced in media that the party will apply for bank credit to finance its campaign. To the end, the United Left was begging for a credit of trust from their voters, and their efforts came up with 3%. Not surprising result at all. On the contrary, it is quite logical and natural and expected after the long-standing strategic partnership between БСП and ДПС, then the coalitions between БСП and Продължаваме промяната and Democratic Bulgaria, and finally the coalition between БСП and ГЕРБ in the government. Some of the other candidates that have a short history in Bulgarian parliament simply shows that it is easy to start up a new political project under the wing of a mainstream party, but it is very difficult to keep your 4% and stay in power. So this is what I see as parties as a parties and their image in the campaign.
Okay, understanding party performance is one thing, but where those votes come from geographically often tells an equally compelling story. Let's explore the spatial dimension of the vote. What does the electoral geography reveal? Where are the strongholds for different parties? You already mentioned the former strongholds of the Turkish ethnic minority party. And what explains these regional patterns and contrasts?
Well, the electoral geography proves the existence of a new political factor that breaks the old political model and obviously rearranges the political constellation. Progressive Bulgaria dominates in 30 of the 31 electoral districts, and its electoral result is at least 2 times bigger than the result of the second one in the district. Even Pazardzhik is dominated by the progressives. At the last elections, Pazardzhik was dominated by DPC. Only Kırgızistan stays under the figure of Delampevsky now. Anyway, the progressive forces have a good result even there, although their result is twice as low as those of Peevsky. As a whole, the new electoral map clearly shows the first political defeat of the Magnitsky-sanctioned Peevsky, which I think is a good result at all.
So geography often overlaps with the social structure, which brings us naturally to the people behind the numbers. Let's focus now on voters themselves. What do we know about the voting preferences of different social groups, such as pensioners, students, intellectuals, the urban middle class, workers, farmers, and ethnic minorities in Bulgaria?
Oh, wow. As the exit polls data shows, I'm using Haufa Research and Trend data. The first time voters were very active in these elections. Most of the Gen Z voting preferences went to progressive Bulgaria, instant to Продължаваме промяната and democratic Bulgaria. Although PPDB paid special attention to Gen Z. I'm very conspicuous when a political party emphasizes too strongly on the young people. Young people are well educated, but still not enough politically experienced, and they are highly vulnerable and could be used and manipulated in one or another political scheme. I read somewhere that the voting preferences of the young people to the progressive Bulgaria is due to the Russian educational system. It is not serious at all. As we all know, the standards and principles of the contemporary educational reform and the educational politics in Bulgaria have nothing in common with Russia. For just on the contrary, in Bulgarian schools, we have the Teach for Bulgaria program, which is not Russian. It comes from the United States. We even had a representative of Teach for Bulgaria as a vice minister of education. The most active in these elections were the voters between 40 and 55 years old. This means the active generation was the most active generation in these elections. The exit poll data does not give information on the vote of intellectuals. First of all, who are the intellectuals? My last monograph is a research attempt in defining the current Bulgarian intellectuals and the anti-intellectual situation they are living and working in. The research outlines several types of intellectuals and poses the question which war the intellectuals are fighting in the political war as a political propaganda tool or in the war of ideas. If we accept that intellectuals are highly educated thinkers, looking at the exit poll data, we can suppose that most of their voting preferences want to progressive and democratic forces. No surprise in this. Intellectuals are a vital resource for each political party, and as such, they represent the cultural capital of the party. So this is what I can say in short for the qualitative characteristics of the voters in these 8 snap elections in Bulgaria.
When we combine demographic and geographic insights, we begin to see not just patterns, but also shifts and surprises. Allow me a personal note. This is our 8th episode on Bulgarian elections in our podcast. 5 years ago, we started Votes and Seeds with a Bulgaria Insight. And here we are now in the 6th series with yet another Bulgaria analysis. So this really means a lot to us as well, but it says a lot of things about Bulgaria and Bulgarian politics and the political situation there as well. Finally, let's look at what's new. Were there any notable novelties, unique developments, or emerging phenomena in this election or the campaign leading up to it?
Well, what's new? The gold medal goes to the professional and tireless fight against vote buying and election security of the Ministry of Interior. We have never had such systematic government activity before. We also have never seen the Bulgarian Socialist Party outside the parliament. Probably this is a kind of sign of the end of the Bulgarian transition that started in 1989, the transition from socialism to democracy in politics, from state-regulated to market economy, and from conservatism to liberalism in culture. It is a pity that in this campaign, the debate on education and culture was somehow missing. We heard a number of declarations against corruption and poverty in the country, about its geopolitical orientation. Progressive Bulgaria even proposed a brand new digital platform with IE as an efficient tool against corruption in public procurement. At the same time, namely the high quality of education and culture of the voters and citizens is the natural tool for combating corruption and many other forms of deviant social behavior. On the other hand, Bulgaria is a very rich country in terms of cultural heritage that needs to be preserved and effectively managed. Regretfully, not even a word on the politics of cultural heritage was mentioned in the campaign. The worst seems that the silence of voters. If you remember, we were analyzing in our first podcast conversation, namely the silence of voters. Seems that the silence of voters is ending. The public trust is slowly rising. The old model is broken, and the new one insists on active and responsible citizenship. And the worst that I can say is God bless Bulgaria.
That brings us to the end of our discussion. Dear Katia, thank you for helping us unpack the many layers of this election, from structural forces to voter behavior and emerging trends. It was a great pleasure talking to you again. And thanks to our listeners for joining us. Stay tuned for more in-depth political analysis in our upcoming episodes. My name is Bálint L. Tóth. Take care. Goodbye.